So moving on, now we've heard about the importance of employing flexible working practices in business and how beneficial it could be to employee retention, productivity and absenteeism. But what about ensuring the security and robustness of your network? Well, it seems like everyone wanted to watch the games, even people who had never taken an interest in sport before. That meant corporate networks faced the prospects of lots of employees streaming the games at work. And with many firms running remote and flexible working policies at the same time, it looked like networks were in for a tough time. Now, businesses were facing a situation where they couldn't work productively, collaborate effectively, work remotely and use mobile device together with keeping critical applications running. Now, Cisco research shows that a quarter of businesses expected connectivity to be the main source of disruption to their business during the games. Now, let's hear what our experts think of this. So, Tom, maybe we can start from you from a Cisco point of view. I mean, what was the importance of businesses creating a robust network for the games?
I think the main transformation in businesses' networks was primarily so that they could enable this access to their main applications, whether the staff were going to be in the office, remote, at home or in other places. And I think that was probably the biggest challenge and then the biggest transformation in those that implemented that sort of strategy. I think from the research we put in place early on, it looked like a third of organisations were going to be making some kind of investment in that area. But actually, as it transpired, by games time, it was more like 80%. Had made some sort of adoption and change to their network for that perspective.
Excellent, thank you, Tom. And maybe from a Deloitte's perspective, David, I mean, can you share with us what Deloitte did in advance to prepare for the anticipated demand on the network?
Sure. Well, there are a number of things that we did. Firstly, we fast-tracked a lot of our projects that were due to enhance remote working software, fairly obvious one. But we also installed technology that allowed simultaneous streaming of internet. We checked our bursting capability with our internet providers. And we changed the proxy service settings so that it allowed unnecessary layers of authentication.
Excellent. Thank you. Now, another key element is IT security. I mean, this should always be a significant priority within any organisation. Businesses without a robust network infrastructure that is secure are potentially taking a chance and face financial loss, damage to their reputation and brand, and loss of confidential data. In light of the potential cyber security threat, nearly 2/3 of businesses invested in network security leading up to London 2012. This involved reviewing antivirus software, firewalls, off-site backups and access to infrastructure. Many organisations transformed their businesses by updating the firewalls, access control and packet monitoring, and also refining protocols, reviewing network privileges and, importantly, training staff. So I'd like to come back to the panel here and get your views on this. And Tom, again, if we could start with you from a security point of view. I mean, how did London 2012 change network security procedures for employers and employees within businesses?
Yeah, if we take that in two parts. I think if you look at it from an employee's perspective, with the remote access in mind, I think it gave them far greater confidence that they'd be able to access some of the key applications and be effective when they're working remotely. I think it enabled them more. It enabled this kind of remote working, that they were more likely to be able to go and do that. And I think it also, in terms of the security issues that crop up in organisations, it actually freed up the core security teams within the IT organisations to get on and do other things, because this robustness, if you like, had been already put in place. I think from a business perspective, it's far more emphasis on the protection of intellectual property more than ever before, and I think the robustness of most businesses now, as a result of what they've gone through, it's never probably been higher. Just before the games, I think it was the head of MI5 who actually highlighted one particular business that had a potential loss of some £800 million purely down to a cyber security issue and a cyber attack. So it's probably put it much more in focus in most organisations' mind.
Excellent, thank you. And David, in terms of Deloitte, I mean, how did Deloitte, again, prepare from a security point of view?
Well, I think the first thing we did was actually physically testing some of our crisis management procedures and processes, and then reacting to the results of those tests. We stayed very close to external sources of information, so whether that's the Foreign and Commonwealth Office or the police. And we went through a campaign to generally increase the awareness of our own people around their own personal security and the security of our data.
Okay, so I mean, most people recognise that security is integral to businesses. But, I mean, what would you say are the important points that an organisation needs to address?
Well, I think there's two things, really. The first is really understand that the cyber threat, we mentioned it earlier about, it can be quite a significantly commercially damaging if you get that wrong. So making sure that you understand that and monitor it properly. And then secondly, I think just make sure that your data is backed up and secured properly. So again, it reduces any risk of infiltration.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so hopefully you found the last 10 minutes or so useful. I'd like to first of all thank my panel for their input to the questions that I've posed to them and the time that they've taken today. What would each of you say in terms of a final wrap-up before we turn to the questions, in terms of sharing advice and the key important points for the audience listening to the webinar today? Maybe we could start with yourself, Steve.
Well, I guess the theme is flexibility. In a changing world, you need to be far more flexible. And whilst there's a lot of talk about technology, also people need to be approached in a different way. The recruitment can be a very old-fashioned way to get talent. You know, you have interviews and you have a 9-to-5 job and you tend to go through the same routes and you tend to get the similar sorts of people. What we found with London 2012 was that we had to spread the net wider. We were tasked with fairly ambitious diversity targets to reflect the population of London. And what this demonstrated to us, that we achieved all of that. This wasn't just a CSR exercise, because at its heart we had to ensure we had the right talent. And what we did is, by spreading the net wider, we uncovered talent which was greater than we anticipated. I think everyone will agree that it was a successful Games. It was successful because the people who put on the Games did a great job, and the people who put on the Games were the people we recruited, and they came from all walks of life, from all over London and the UK. Over 10% of the workforce were people with disabilities. Over 31% were people from Black, Asian and minority ethnic backgrounds. Nearly half were women. It was a very different workforce to that which you would anticipate in any large organisation. And yet, because we spread the net wider, we managed to put on a fantastic Games. And I think the legacy for any business out there is to think more flexibly about where you're getting your talent from, because in this day and age, flexibility, the need to compete on a global scale is essential. And if you reflect your customers, reflect your stakeholders with your own workforce that can drive innovation through its own diversity, then I think you are on a winner. It's all about competitiveness through getting the best talent.
Fantastic, thank you. And certainly one of the happiest workforces I've ever seen before. Tom?
Yeah, I think from our perspective, I think London 2012 has probably changed remote working or flexible working in most businesses forever. I think, you know, everybody will be thinking completely different to that sort of policy for the future. I think from a business continuity perspective, I think the bar has now been raised extremely high, and really we have proved that with all of that disruption, businesses can be run effectively and efficiently and profitably. And I think finally, the businesses really that put the most preparation in ahead of the Games and really put in place the policies and procedures are the ones that are now not only enjoyed, you know, the best out of the Games, but actually are enjoying the best from the business opportunities that are coming in the wake of the Games as well. Thank you.
David?
I guess for us, there are two things from a legacy perspective. One is deriving the real commercial benefits of flexibility in the workforce, which we've seen, and by embedding those policies and making it happen on a day-to-day basis, we've seen that. And then secondly, just the improvements in our security through the investment that we made in those IT systems to make our data more secure than it was before.